Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new episode of the Fintech Hunting Podcast. We have an incredible guest for you today. She's an industry thought leader, trailblazer, engagement expert, networking guru, and extremely well respected in the industry. The accolades could go on and on. She is a repeat guest. She is so sought after in the industry. I can't believe how lucky we are to have her today. Please help me welcome Sue Woodard, Senior Advisor to Total Expert.
Hey, I'm so glad to be here, but if you're listening, do not believe the hype. I'm the one who's honored to be here with you, my friend.
Well, it is great to have you. I got to see you for probably about 5 or 10 seconds in Tampa at the 2020 Vision for Success Summit. It was great seeing you.
It was good to see you. There was a lot of great leaders there, and it was fun to at least pass even like ships in the night and be able to say hi to each other now that we're out and about again.
Absolutely. Well, before we dive into engagement and all of the great things, and I know you've written new articles and everything, let's first, what are some of the things you're seeing? What are some of the market conditions as you're out there talking to people, going to conferences? What are some of the general trends and kind of tone that you're seeing out there in the market today?
Oh, it's kind of a mixed bag, whether you're talking about if you're talking in front of people or if you're kind of talking like behind closed doors. I think there's a little bit of a difference, but obviously everybody knows, no secret that the market has changed rather significantly and a little bit faster than anticipated. So I think, as in most markets like this is not the first time we've been through a market like this. The way I kind of look at it is it's almost like you're at the airport and you're walking on the moving sidewalk for the last couple of years, and we just kind of stepped off the end and we're like, whoa, so we're still moving, we're still walking. In fact, based on the current projections, this would still be one of the best years in the last 15. I think third best year on record in the last 15 if we hit the current projected numbers, but it's more the shock to the system of coming off the end of that moving sidewalk. So a lot of the conversations that I'm hearing from lenders are really talking about how do they really get smart with their efficiencies. Some of the topics we're going to talk about today, how do they really take a good hard look at their tech stack and make sure that they're getting the results and the outcomes that they're expecting to get, and how do they measure for those things? How do they ensure that they're getting the engagement and adoption? And in some places, how are they able to, reduce their expenses? I mean, we've seen the expense per loan kind of shoot up recently, and that's not because there's new expenses, but there's just more loans to pass some of those fixed expenses around between. So I just think there's a big change in kind of that refinance muscle memory. The whole industry was used to doing things in a certain way. When you're standing in a money machine, it's all about how you just slam and jam and get people through. And the purchase market is just very different. And so it's changing those old habits. And then sometimes, I think it's important to remember two things. Number one, and Joe Welu, the CEO of Total Expert, says this often, I'd never bet against home ownership. And I think that's a good thing that I keep remembering too, is that people are going to still keep buying homes. It is still, we still have neighborhoods and communities and people for whom this is, the American dream, right? But I also think it's a time when the best businesses that are out there and the best originators that are out there, they started, really building who they are and why they're so great during markets like this. They didn't become great in the great markets. They became great because of the actions that they took right now in markets exactly like this. And so I find that a bit encouraging, as a time to kind of shore up and say, hey, let's take a good hard look at what we're doing and maybe what we should be doing.
I so love that. I mean, there were so many great points there, but as you end, this is the point where companies that lean in gain market share, when they're strategic, when they're fully leveraging their tech stack, when they're getting that adoption. I mean, if we look back and we're nowhere near conditions that we were in 2008, the top lenders were not Rocket. They weren't UWM. Loan Depot wasn't around. And I mean, the list could go on. But a lot of those companies in that market leaned in, and now they're market leaders. So
that's exactly right. Yeah.
Let's talk about, you've written a number of articles, but recently you wrote one, Light a Fire Under Your Digital Adoption Plans. Tell me a little bit about that, because I think it really ties into Total Expert and engagement and user adoption. So give me some of the highlights from that as we dive into this topic.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I think, I was so incredibly passionate about during, particularly during my time at Total Expert. And in fact, folks who are customers of Total Expert know that following the best practices, they're able to boast a 90 to 91% engagement rate, which is
Wow.
almost unheard of when you're following the best practices, right? And so it is a topic that I'm pretty passionate about, and it's timely right now just because so many lenders had so many pieces of technology that they just kind of were like, sure, we'll take one of those, couple of those, and they acquired a number of things either intentionally or by acquisition. They acquire a company, a branch, a loan officer, and suddenly you've acquired all these various technologies, right? And so it's a time that lenders are, again, kind of pulling up, looking at their costs and saying, okay, oh my gosh, I've got all of these different things. We need to get really smart about what are people using. And I think that the headline that I've shared with a lot of lenders right now is be careful before you just go throwing something out because you're saying, well, nobody's logged into this, in the last couple of years, right? People haven't had time to floss in the last couple of years. And so hang on before you go throwing something out that might be exactly what people need right now for this market. Of course, they haven't logged into everything in the last couple of years. But the corollary to that is logging in is not always, sometimes lenders look to that as being the test of if a technology is being used as logins. And the best technologies are making the magic happen without a loan officer, without your revenue producers,
right,
to log in, right?
Absolutely. And I think some of the tools out there, people didn't really necessarily have to fully embrace when loans were just flying off the shelves.
That's right.
The last couple of years, people talked about engagement was important and outreach was important, but that's in the context of all of those loans are flying off the shelves. Now when you have to be much more strategic and you have to foster and build relationships with your realtor network, you have to foster and build relationships with the borrower, it's a totally different game than it was just even 6 months ago or a year ago.
Yeah, that's right. And, you think about it, actually what happened during, just even if you just say during the pandemic, outside of even the mortgage industry, it accelerated digital transformation. I mean, I read some data where it's something like 5 to 7 years faster than normal. So all kinds of technologies have come out there. But to your good point, loan officers I get very frustrated, by the way, Michael, and you've heard me say this before, when people will talk about loan officers being lazy because they won't, log into something. And I don't know a lot of 100% commission people that are lazy. And
exactly.
So I get very irritated when people say that. It's like, no, but they're going to go for the path of least resistance for the maximum return on their time. Right. And if, and in your, as you said, during a market like this where loans are flying in the door, setting aside time, learning a new technology, logging into something, if there's not an immediate return, they weren't going to do it in that market. But today's a different day.
Well, and that is such a good point because you're right. Top producers are not lazy. They're out there shaking the trees, doing things, but they really have to find where's the ROI. And if it's not worth my time, I'm going to use that effort somewhere else.
Yep.
So what are one of the ways that vendors can make sure that those tools are meaningful so that people want to use the tools so that there is great adoption?
Yep. Now that's a great point, because as I've talked with lenders about hang on before you go throw things out, I've also been talking with vendors about get in there proactively and make sure that you are really showcasing the best practices, the ways to use these things. And I think most importantly, how do you automate your business? How do you make a loan officer, whether they are a top producer or a top producer, to be, how do you help make their business more automated and more automatic so that it's not labor intensive and you're able to use that human touch and that human person in all the places during the transaction that the human should be. So, some of the things that I think about and that I've talked to the vendors about is really thinking about how do you make sure that you can have a, I don't want to say set it and forget it, but how can you automate all that you can to make it really easy for those really busy producers who are on 100% commission to just get the value out of, whatever your technology is. I mean, again, at Total Expert, there's so many examples of how this can happen with, the intelligent automation, the journeys, all of the things, the intelligent triggers, the data that's coming up, daily digest being pushed out to you where you don't have to log into anything. It's all happening and coming out to you, right? But that's what I'm encouraging all technology vendors to really take a good hard look at, is how can you make it as simple and easy as possible? Because, there's some human nature at play, right?
Yep.
I mean, if somebody tells me, oh, you got to sit down at your computer for, 40 hours and learn something, I'm just like, oh gosh, please just make it easier. That's what technology is supposed to do, is make our lives easier, right? But I think that the lenders have a responsibility there, to lead their loan officers to make great decisions, and put things into place. But the vendors have a big responsibility as well to ensure that they are rolling out what are the best practices. What are the success stories that you're seeing? I mean, those are the things that really, man, they always appealed to me as a loan officer. I wanted to know what those top producers were doing. And so when you see just case after case after case of a top producer embracing something and seeing those outcomes, those are big, important things to be raising up.
I love it. And the one comment you made that I think is so critical, when we talk about automating tasks, it doesn't mean we're trying to eliminate people.
No.
To your point, it's when you can automate those manual, redundant tasks, those things that create transparency, those things that don't make people log in, that give statuses, notifications, and insights, so that the people can do what they need to and foster and grow those relationships.
Exactly.
Really handle those exceptions to the loan and be able to work with the borrower. That's where the magic happens. And I love how you really intertwine the two of its automation and using technology so that the humans can have a more genuine and authentic relationship in the whole lending process.
Right on. And in a purchase market, that's what it's about. A refinance is a financial transaction. A purchase is a life event or life experience. I mean, ask anybody, you and me included. When you purchase a property, it's a life event happening.
Absolutely.
Else going on, a marriage, a divorce, a baby being born, different things. But even just when you're moving, or even if it's a vacation home, it's a big life event, and that requires a different level of human interaction. And I heard a top producing loan officer once say, I can't outwork technology. He's like, I'm not threatened by technology. I want to work with it because I can't outwork it. I have to sleep. It doesn't. So yes, I want to automate all the things that I can so that I can, elevate myself. And, if you're sitting there doing repetitive tasks yourself, then you're not there for those moments where that real estate agent or that customer really needs you. And with a competitive market, man, you got to be there. I mean, speed to connect is really important, whether that be technology, human, or the magic combination of both.
Absolutely. And the technology also allows for things not to necessarily fall through the cracks, right? I talk about this a lot. A lot of loan officers get on what I call the mortgage roller coaster, right? I mean, they look at their pipeline and like, oh crap. I mean, I don't have enough deals in it. So what do? They prospect like crazy. They're calling all their realtor connections. And then the next 2 months, all of the lead gen goes down. They're only working in their pipeline, not on it. And that's when, if you don't have the technology to consistently send out the journeys, to send out the updates, to make sure that you're in front of people with a consistent and a genuine message, that's where things fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
Talk to me now. So as a lender, as a loan officer, I'm listening to this. Why should I tackle engagement now?
Well, I mean, it's as we said earlier, the loan officers and the lenders who became the greats did it right now when things were hard. And right now you have a little bit more time, and right now you have a little bit more necessity, right? And so I do think it's a really important time that if you have, you haven't had the time, I give a lot of grace for that. I get it. You haven't had time, but now you do. And now, even if you feel like you don't have time, because you know how our work tends to expand to the allowed amount of time. I'm a big fan of time blocking, and it is critically important to time block out the time right now to dig into the offerings that your company has. I mean, I work with just top companies, top lenders all over the nation that have incredible tech stacks that they're making available for their loan officers. Many of them require a little bit of investment from the loan officer, which I have always been a fan of. Skin in the game is not a bad thing.
Exactly.
It's not a bad thing. I pay a trainer because otherwise I may not be going to the gym, right? So I'm okay with that. But time blocking out the time that you need and really reaching out to, the folks, if you're a loan officer, reach out to the folks inside your company and say, hey, I want to learn, I want to dig into X and embrace it, whether it's Total Expert or if it's white labeled inside your company or some of the other great tools that you have inside your company. Now is the time. I mean, it is. The summer tends to be a little bit, it's where people kind of take their foot off the gas. And I'm saying, man, if you want to win in this market and not be, kind of, okay, I will get started in 23, but already rolling into 23, the time is right now to do that. And so, as I said, I would time block out the time. I would dig into these, lean into those vendors, those solution providers, to be your partners in it. They want you to win, right? So work with your company, and then those of the company, if you're an admin or a leader listening to this, don't try to figure it all out on your own. Your vendor partners want you to win. Lean on them. They know the best practices. They know what's needed. They can share with you the success stories that are going to get your team excited. But lean back into them. Don't try to figure it out on your own.
Such great insights. And one of the things that I know I've heard you mention in the past are, here's some keys to tech engagement and adoption. Share, like if I'm that lender, I'm kind of going through that list. I'm the loan officer here listening, saying, Sue's saying to lean in. She's saying that I've got to reach out to the lender. What are some of those things that should really be top of mind that they should focus on?
The kind of things that, just in terms of some tactical things that lenders can do in terms of like getting their team re-embracing, some of the technologies that they might have not had the time to dig into in the last couple of years. You can put together incentives, gamify things, right? Make it a contest or a challenge. I think that's something that always appealed to me. It still does. I'm competitive. And so anytime there's like a challenge or a competition or there's, just something on the line, swag or what have you, those can be really powerful incentives. Raising up the key champions inside your company. If you've got people who are the power users of whether it be Total Expert or some other technology, raise those people up and share those success stories around the company. I'm always a big fan of kind of pulling the team together, creating, boot camps or, something like that. I'm a big advocate of putting time on the calendar regularly to pull your team together and do that. You could do a Tech Tuesday at 2 p.m. So everybody knows Tuesdays at 2 p.m. This is the time that I know that this session is going to be happening where I can get online and ask questions and hear about the latest things. There's a lot of different things that you can put in place. Having a hotline for help. Total Expert's pretty unique in that I think it's you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's the only tech that I know of that actually has support for end users, for loan officers. Like frontline loan officers themselves can get help directly from Total Expert, as well as the real estate agent partners. I don't know of anybody else that does that. And so
there's not a lot out there that will go to that level. They typically will just go to the administrator and not provide that frontline support.
Yeah, so use it. It's a little blue dot in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, right? But again, if you're a lender, encourage people to know where that is or have your own little hotline for help, create an email address or a phone number that helps that people can dial into. Share those success stories, right? And I think sometimes people feel like, well, we rolled it out, it should be good. It's the studies about you have to say it like 9 times or something before it actually starts to register.
That is such a good point, because I think the companies, they've invested the money, they've got it installed, and then now they kind of move on to the next task. And that's not necessarily what drives adoption. That's not necessarily what drives the usership of the different LOs. Like you said, whether it's 9 times, 12 times, I've heard all kinds of statistics that you've got to hear it multiple times. And everyone's in a different position, right? Maybe when they heard it, the refi boom was off and running, their pipeline was full, and they're like, yeah, I'll get to that later. And now it's time to kind of re-engage with them.
Yes.
What are you've been doing this, you have so many great insights. What are some of the biggest hurdles or impediments that lenders face to get the LOs to adopt?
Interestingly, I've talked about this a fair amount, and it's maybe a little, I don't know, it's a little, some people don't like this, but I'm going to tell you what I think. One of the things that I've seen is I've seen leaders that are sometimes afraid of their loan officers, where they will not, they'll lay back and say, oh, I'm going to tell them we've got this thing, but if they don't want to use it, they don't have to. And I think that is a gigantic mistake, particularly in markets like this. Leaders need to lead. Your people are looking at you to lead. I was, thinking recently of the analogy of, and you've been on, I think you told me you traveled 21 days in June. So you were on some flights, I'm guessing, right?
I was on a number of flights.
And when we're flying, I've had a number of flights myself recently. And when it gets turbulent, we're listening for the pilot to come on and in a kind of maybe confident, bored voice say, hey, we're going through some turbulence. Here's what we're doing. We're going to go up to this level. We're going to go around it. And I'm looking for the other leaders, the flight attendants to be calm and relaxed and doing their thing, right? Well, we're going through some turbulence in this industry right now. And your people are looking to you as a leader to lead. And so I get frustrated, and you can tell I'm passionate about this topic, but
Absolutely.
It is a time that you need to go in and say, this is what we are doing as a company. This is what's right for the company. I'm not telling you that you should treat everybody exactly the same. If you've got your top 10 producers, and that Sally and Joe have their ways of doing things, awesome. Work with that technology provider who is going to be happy to help you figure out how to make this work for your, those top producers who have a particular way of doing things, right? But for everybody else, I'm a big advocate of what's called the all in, all on strategy, meaning when you're putting a technology in place, don't make it like, well, if you want to, you can check it out. Nope. Put it in place for everyone and turn it on and let that automation happen. Now, I'm not saying you do that as a surprise, you
right.
Turn it on and run away, but I do think that, leaders need to lead. And in great markets, it's a lot easier to lead. In a market like this, yeah, it is tougher. And yeah, there are some tough conversations you need to have, but you can't have 59,000 different technologies in your place and try to support those. You need to pick the solutions that are going to be the innovators, that are going to be the horses that you want to hitch your wagon to for the future, the ones that are listening to you. But you need to put them in place and turn them on and let them work for your loan officers, rather than shying away and saying, gosh, if they want to, they can do this or not. It doesn't matter to me. If we have 25,000 things, that's okay. That's not being a leader. So,
Sue, I love that, because I think I'm a firm believer that everything rises and falls on leadership. And to your point, in a tough market, leaders need to step up, and this whole will dabble, try whatever works for you. That's a bunch of garbage. And I'm so glad you brought that up in this discussion, because I think they're doing more damage. Maybe it doesn't cause as much friction when they roll it out, but at the end of the day, they're not really helping their team. There's a reason that tool, that solution was selected. It was vetted. The senior leadership knows why that tool would be so beneficial. That I couldn't agree with you more. It's time to lean in and say, hey, leaders, step up and really demonstrate to your team why we selected this. All in and let's go.
Yep. That is spot on.
Great insight. So what do you see for the rest of the year?
Well, it's been interesting. I've been reading a lot about some of the inventory challenges and some of the different things going on, where interest rates may go. And, I guess my look forward is, it does certainly appear to me that we're headed towards a recession. Interest rates tend to decline, when we head towards a recession. There's so many weird and interesting factors in play, but I do think, we're not going to see interest rates continuing to rocket through the roof. And it's, as I said early on, I'd never bet against home ownership. And so I still think there is an incredible market out there for the people that are willing to say, hey, right now, I'm not going to take the summer off. I'm going to actually, I'm going to dig in, and I'm going to, whether you're a leader or wherever you're at in your company, these are the times that great people and great businesses are forged and founded. And so I think for the rest of the year, we're going to see kind of I think there probably will be a little summer lull in purchasing, as there generally is. But I still think it's going to be a relatively, down year from last year, but still a healthy year when you look, historically. I think sometimes panning back and taking a look historically at both interest rates and volume numbers gives some valuable and needed perspective. So I'm a incurable optimist, as you know, and so I'm still a big believer. But I do think that this is a time where people are making tough decisions right now about their businesses and within their businesses. But I do think that what's going to come out the other side is a much healthier industry, and an industry that is probably a little bit leaner, a little bit sharper, a little bit more efficient, but hopefully has found that better blend of technology and the human being that both gives the people what they need and when they need it. People consistently continue to say in all demographics that they want to do some things digitally, but they want that human being to be there for that advice and help when they want it, and they will want it during that process. So I hope to see us as I said, as we round out the year, the industry may be a bit leaner, but healthier.
Oh, Sue, so many great insights. You and I could talk for hours. You are welcome back anytime. I can't thank you enough. So thank you for being a guest on this episode of the Fintech Hunting Podcast.
Thank you.